In unhealthy families, one child becomes the scapegoat, perhaps two, but the children tend to be sensitive, open, curious, slightly rebellious, and may take on different interests than the rest of the family unit. The scapegoat children are blamed for all of the family issues. Adults in dysfunctional families tend to externalize or blame their issues on others. This is why a scapegoat is chosen within the family. Typically, this is an unconscious process. Parents use the child or the children to fulfill the illusion that if the child or children have issues, the family would be perfect if they didn't have those issues. It also means that the child doesn't take responsibility to change. With time, a scapegoat child comes to internalize the belief that they are the problem. This creates a lot of shame and self worth is impacted. Because parents in these homes are highly emotionally immature, they're not aware of their impact. Many people who have been the scapegoat tend to be highly defensive because they had to defend themselves since childhood. Often, the scapegoat child or children are labeled as dysfunctional, but the reality is the parent had a difficult time dealing with and raising a child. Someone is still telling jokes they learned from you. Someone is still using the phrases and words you used. Someone is still listening to the music you've showed them. Someone is still smiles when they remember a moment with you. Someone is still encouraged by the advice you gave them. Someone admires you from afar and is inspired by you. Someone learned how to love from you. They go about their lives, maybe without realizing how much of you they've kept with them. It's there and how they handle things differently. In small choices they make, or in the way they see things a bit clearer. You might just be a memory on the surface, but underneath, there's more. You've become part of who they are, shaping them in ways that might seem small, but matter deeply. And while they may not say it, they're grateful for it. You made a mark that lasts. The emotionally neglected adult moves through life with an invisible wound, carrying a profound emptiness she cannot name. She excels at caring for others while struggling to identify her own needs. In social situations, she watches others navigate emotions with an ease that feels foreign to her, like they all received a manual she never got. Despite her outward competence, inside lives a deep disconnect. She struggles to answer simple questions about her preferences or feelings, having learned early that her emotional world was irrelevant. The journey to self discovery feels like learning a new language in adulthood. As she slowly unlearns the art of self abandonment, each small act of self acknowledgement becomes a radical step toward wholeness. In these moments of connection with herself, she finally understands her emotions aren't just valid, they are vital to her existence, integral to her humanity, and worthy of the space they occupy in the world. Setting boundaries doesn't cost you real connections. It shows you which ones were not real. People will say you're pushing away friends, missing opportunities, and damaging relationships, but this couldn't be further from the truth. Real friends don't vanish when you voice your needs. True opportunities don't dissolve when you protect your peace. Genuine relationships don't crumble when you express your limits. Instead, you lose the people who were never truly there for you. The manipulators who twisted your reality, the narcissists who fed off of your kindness, the controllers who resented your independence, the emotional vampires who drained your energy. Healthy connections don't require you to shrink yourself. If setting boundaries makes someone disappear, they were never meant to stay in your story. The black sheep of the family has felt alone or misunderstood their entire life. They can also see dysfunction most clearly and want to heal from the past. They're curious, sensitive, and willing to self reflect, which makes them stand out from other family members. The black sheep becomes the scapegoat of the family. Family members project their unwanted traits or wanted traits and issues onto that family black sheep member. This allows the person to blame dynamics on one person and avoid looking at the true, deeper issues within themselves. Sometimes the black sheep plays the peacemaker role. They're expected to step in and fix the family issues, even if those issues don't directly involve them. Some black sheep know from a young age that the adults in their homes cannot be trusted and begin taking care of themselves. Many black sheep are deep feelers who are curious and open. This is a stark contrast to other family members who are emotionally shut down, rigid, black and white thinkers. As the years go on, the black sheep feels the deep rage, regret, and disappointment within the family unit. They live within the chaos until they go out into their own. The black sheep tend to be extremely interesting, engaged, creative people who have been stifled as children. Their humor, independence, and sensitive nature can allow them to thrive as adults. You will overcome this challenge, just like you've overcome everything else life has thrown at you. You were terrified of driving, but now you're confidently behind the wheel. The stress of bills piling up kept you awake at night, yet somehow you always found a way. You started that job feeling completely overwhelmed, but mastered it. You moved to a new city knowing no one, but built a life there. You tackled living alone for the first time, figuring out everything by yourself. You learned new skills that once seemed too complicated. You made it through sleepless nights and exhausting days. You went through that painful breakup thinking you'd never heal, but you did. Each time you thought, I can't, you did. You found a way, you learned, you grew stronger. You've proven time and time again that you're capable of amazing things, especially when they seem impossible at first. You've got this, not because it's easy, but because built a lifetime of evidence that you can handle hard things. According to psychology, your mind is always searching for proof of what you believe. If you tell yourself that things are always going to be wrong, your brain will focus on every setback, every small inconvenience, and use them as evidence to confirm that narrative. It's not that life is objectively worse, it's that your brain is doing its job, seeking to reinforce the story you've chosen to tell. But here's the key, it works the other way too. If you start asking yourself, how can things get better? Or what good is happening in my life? Your brain will begin to look for those answers. It will seek out the small victories, the moments of growth, and the opportunities for change, gradually shifting your perception toward hope and possibility. This is confirmation bias at work, but it doesn't have to be negative. Your mind is simply doing what it's wired to do. Find evidence that supports the reality you believe in. So be mindful of the story you're writing. The narrative you create shapes the lens through which you see your life. Be intentional about how you frame your experiences because what you tell yourself today will be the world you see tomorrow. You lose nothing by admitting you were wrong. We will do anything to protect our ego. The thing is, nobody expects you to be perfect. What they do expect, what they do value is authenticity and honesty. There's something powerfully disarming about someone who can look you in the eye and say, I was wrong, and I'm sorry. It shows emotional intelligence. Most importantly, it shows respect both for yourself and for others. When you admit your mistakes, you're demonstrating that you value truth over pride, connection over ego, growth over appearance. The very thing we think will diminish us, admitting we're wrong, actually elevates us in others' eyes. Being right isn't nearly as important as being real. The oldest parentified daughter believes her role is to fix everything and everyone around her. She keeps her depression a secret and fantasizes about meeting the one person who will finally see her for who she is, not how she can perform for them. The parentified daughter has marital problems, walked on eggshells, and did her best to manage everyone else's anxiety. No one noticed her own anxiety. She spent most of her time in her room fantasizing about the perfect families on TV. The parentified daughter had to be the responsible and strong one because no one else was. She wants someone to lift her load, to care about what she feels, and to be a shoulder for her to cry on instead of keeping it together. The parentified daughter feels exhausted and burnt out, yet she habitually conceals these emotions. As time passes, she internalizes the belief that her own feelings, needs are insignificant. She finds herself in a state of confusion, having never experienced genuine attunement from others. It has been said time heals all wounds. I do not agree. The wounds remain. In time, the mind protecting its sanity with the scar tissue and the pain lessens, but it is never gone. Starting something new scares you because you're worried about how it'll end. We've all experienced the pain of endings, relationships that crumbled, dreams that didn't pan out, projects that failed. Life teaches you everything ends. Every story has a last page. Every movie has credits. Every life has a final breath. Endings are inevitable. It's part of life's cycle. Perhaps it's time to reframe how you view beginnings and endings. Consider embracing the entire journey, not just the parts that feel safe. Every ending carries within it the seeds of a new start. Don't let the fear of the final chapter stop you from writing your story. You can forgive someone without justifying their behavior. Just because you forgive someone doesn't mean you're okay with what they did. When someone wrongs you, who suffers the most from holding on to that anger? It's not them, it's you. Forgiving doesn't mean pretending the hurt never happened. And it certainly doesn't mean allowing that person to hurt you again. You can forgive someone for lying to you while still acknowledging that lying is wrong. You can forgive a friend for their hurtful words while still affirming that respect is crucial in friendships. You can forgive a parent for their shortcomings while still understanding that their behavior was damaging. The act of forgiveness does not always lead to reconciliation either. You can forgive someone and still choose to not have them in your life. Forgiveness isn't about the other person, it's about you. It's a gift you give yourself. It's freeing yourself from the emotional prison that resentment builds around you. Forgive for your sake, not for theirs. Life has a way of hitting the pause button when we least expect it. Maybe it's a sudden loss that stops you in your tracks, or a health scare that makes everything else seem trivial. Perhaps it's a global pandemic that brings the whole world to a standstill. What if I told you that during this pause, there is profound opportunity available to you? A chance to reassess, to realign with what truly matters, to see clearly what you've been too busy to notice. You begin to understand that life isn't just about the doing, it's about being. You realize that sometimes the most important growth happens in the quiet moments, in the pauses. Life changes. You lose love, you lose friends, you lose pieces of yourself that you never imagined would be gone. And then, without you even realizing it, these pieces come back. New love enters, better friends come along, and a stronger, wiser you is staring back in the mirror. No matter how bad it gets, better days are always waiting, hoping you'll make it there to accept the smiles and joy that they're offering.